welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about some common properties and methods for nodes. Now hopefully you recall that nodes are the basic way that include a lot of the topics we've been covering, such as panes, circles, or geometric objects. They cover a wide variety of things in JavaFX. And the abstract class node has a variety of properties and methods that are common to all nodes. Therefore, we should know them so that we can keep some sort of constant methods that we know will work with any type of node. Now, JavaFX style elements are some of the most important methods you're going to be working with. They're actually very similar to cascading style sheets, or CSS, which you might use to specify styles for an HTML element in a web page. So these style properties in JavaFX are called JavaFX CSS. In JavaFX, a style property is defined with the prefix -fx-. Each node has its own style properties. You can actually find these properties at an Oracle link. I'll paste that as a comment at the bottom of our program. And here it is. This will just allow you to see a lot of the elements that are available for Java. And if you want to see them, you want to see all of them, we're only going to be talking about a couple of them today. But if you wanted to use some of them, you can look at them here, and therefore you can apply them. We're only going to be talking about some of the most important ones today. For more information, you can always refer to that, but today we're going to be talking about stroke, fill, and we're going to be talking about the rotate method, which is not a style element, but it's very close, so we're just going to be putting it in this same lesson. So let's say we want to set the style. We wanted to set the stroke of the circle, which means we want to set the outside line color to, let's say, black, and we want to set the fill status to red. The way to do this is to use the circle.setStyle method. And we're actually going to eliminate these two lines. Even though you can override a CSS element once it's already been created, you can reassign its value. We're just going to eliminate that, and we're going to actually change the color and the line status of our program, of our circle, for the first time. We're going to say circle.setStyle. Inside setStyle, we provide a value. Now hopefully you recall, as I mentioned, that you're going to have your prefix, which is the -fx-. In addition, everything has to be marked off as a string, because that's the way CSS is read. The syntax for setting style is style name, value. If you want to separate multiple style properties, you can use a semicolon. So, if we want to set the outside line color to black and the fill status to red, we would say -fx- stroke with no space, then a colon, black, then a semicolon, because we're finished with setting the outside line color. Now we want to set the fill status. So we would say -fx- fill, semicolon, red. Colon, red. And then your semicolon to end your statement. And then we need our semicolon at the end because we want to end our entire statement. The reason we have a semicolon that ends the statement here is that we want to make sure that the Java virtual machine or Java compiler knows that this CSS ends right here at this semicolon, because it's a mini statement almost inside a statement. Now what we're doing here is actually identical to if you had said circle.setStroke, and then you provided your color, which in this case is color.black. And then you would say, if you want to change the fill status, we would say circle.set set fill. And then we would just say color dot, and then we provide our color, which in this case is red. So these two statements are identical, but obviously you're going to want to use the set style since it allows a lot more flexibility, and we can actually compact it quite a bit since we can fit in multiple style annotations in one singular line. Now it's important to note that even if your JavaFX CSS is incorrect, your program will still compile, but the style will just be ignored. This is because CSS is fundamentally additional, so even if it's not correct, the Java virtual machine will just ignore it as though it wasn't there. Now that we can talk about the rotate property. The rotate property enables us to set an angle in degrees for rotating the node from its center. If the degree is positive, the rotation is performed clockwise, otherwise it's performed counterclockwise. For example, if we were working with the button we've created in any of these three scenes, we could say first, let's say we want to, inside our first one where the button takes up where our button takes up the entire screen, we want it to say that the button should be rotated by 80 degrees. So to do that, we would just say pane, and in this case we're going to be working with the stack pane object we created here, and I'm sorry, this isn't going to be the one that takes up the entire screen. This is the singular horizontal button that we created. My apologies for that, I misspoke. But we're going to rotate this by, let's say, 80 degrees. So to do that, all we have to do is say pane.setRotate, and then we provided double value. In our case, we want to rotate it 80 degrees clockwise. So we would say 80, and this will rotate that entire thing 80 degrees. So now if we run our program, you can see that, first of all, we can prove that our circle worked correctly because we have a black line surrounding our circle, so we know our CSS worked correctly, and the fill status is now red. In addition, if we look at our stack pane object, you'll notice the button and everything else works the same way. However, this time, the button itself has been rotated 80 degrees because we specified 80 as our number. If you want to change that number, all you have to do is change the set rotate. So we can now make it 55. And then if we run the program again, we'll get that button now rotated by 55 degrees. And now you'll notice it's slanted slightly less than before because it rotates clockwise, and this case 55 degrees. Now before we end this lesson, I'd like to give one quick note about another useful class in the useful method in the node class. We won't use it right now, but it's a very useful method that specifically if you're working with geometric objects. This will work with any node, and it's the contains method. You would provide a double x and a double y, and it allows you to test whether the point xy as a pixel is included inside the boundary of a node. For example, this could be useful if you ask the user to provide if you let the user resize the window, and you wanted them to, let's say, check if a certain point was inside the circle. All you'd have to do is just say the node class, let's say pane, let's say you had the pane1 object, you would just say pane1.contains, for example, 50, 50, and that would just check if 50, 50, the point, is included inside the node. Now remember, this is a node, not necessarily the window, and those are two very distinct ideas. So make sure that you're using the appropriate node object, in this case a pane or stack pane. Otherwise, you might run into issues when you use the contains method, as it might say something is contained when in reality it really doesn't make sense. Hopefully you found this lesson useful. To summarize, in today's lesson, we talked about CSS, and we talked about JavaFX CSS specifically. We talked about the setStyle method and the contains method and the setRotate method. We talked about how to use these methods. We talked about the specific syntax for using them. And we talked about how to actually practically apply them, as we did when we set the stroke color and the fill color, and we rotated the stack pane object by 55 degrees. We also talked about the contains method, which allows us to check whether or not a point is included inside a node. Hopefully you found this lesson useful, and hopefully you're able to use the style and the other methods we talked about with all the nodes you can use.